He brought his mistress to sign divorce to shame his wife, not knowing he was shaming himself. The courtroom fell silent. The sound of a gold pen scratching across paper sliced through the air. Damon Voss, billionaire founder of Voss Innovations, signed his name with the confidence of a man who thought he owned every outcome. Beside him, Celeste Ray adjusted her diamond bracelet, her smile bright and cruel. Across the table, Amara Wynne sat still, hands folded, her expression calm. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was precision. Judge Navarro's brow furrowed as he turned another page, confusion replacing routine. Damon leaned back, smirking, certain the game was his. In that moment, no one noticed Amara's eyes, steady, watchful, waiting. Every empire falls the same way, not with thunder, but with a single quiet decision. Stay with this story. What happens next will make you question who truly holds the power. The air inside the courtroom felt heavy, frozen between pride and silence. Every gaze shifted toward Celeste Ray, her smirk sharp enough to cut glass. She sat close to Damon, crossing her legs, whispering something that made him grin. The flash of her diamond bracelet caught the light again, as if mocking everyone watching. Amara Wynne sat across from them, motionless. Her back straight, her eyes calm. She didn't flinch when Damon reached for the gold pen, turning it between his fingers like a king holding a scepter. He signed the divorce papers slowly, each stroke deliberate, savoring his own victory. Judge Navarro's eyes moved from the papers to the woman sitting so still, so composed. He'd seen arrogance before, but this was cruelty wrapped in wealth. When Damon slid the papers across the table, the faint scratch echoed like a verdict. Celeste smiled wider, leaning toward him. "It's done," she whispered. But Amara didn't look at her. She simply exhaled, quiet and steady. The cold in that room wasn't from the air conditioner, it was the kind that comes when justice waits its turn. What none of them knew was that Amara had been waiting too. But Damon hadn't always been this man with ice in his veins. Once he was hungry, hopeful, and human. Before the luxury cars, before the magazine covers, Damon Voss had been a man with nothing but ambition and a second-hand laptop. In those early days, Amara Wynne was his constant. She believed in him when no one else did. She paid rent, cooked simple meals, edited his presentations late into the night. He called her his lucky charm, his balance. She called him her dreamer. Together, they built the first spark of what became Voss Innovations, a company that promised to change the world. When the first contract came, Damon lifted her hand and said, "We did it, baby." And for a moment, he meant it. The world felt endless, their love unbreakable. But money changes how people see each other. Success gave Damon more than power. It gave him options. As the company grew, he began dressing sharper, speaking less, staying out later. The man who once asked Amara for advice now told her what to do. She tried to ignore it, reminding herself that love takes patience. She didn't see it yet, but the distance between them had already begun. When Voss Innovations hit its first billion, celebration turned into spectacle. Parties, photos, headlines. That's when Celeste Ray entered, the new PR director with ice-blonde hair and the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. She moved through Damon's orbit like light, knowing exactly how to make him feel seen. "You're not just a businessman," she once said during a press shoot. "You're a brand." He liked the way she said it. He liked the way she looked at him, too. At first, Amara didn't mind. Celeste was smart, ambitious, everything a growing company needed. But then came the whispers. Staff started saying, "The boss and the PR queen make a good pair." Photos of them at late dinners began to surface. Amara heard the laughter, saw the glances, and stayed quiet. She wanted to believe this was still the man who'd shared cheap coffee with her in a one-bedroom apartment. But the truth had already started to show itself, in the way he checked his phone when she spoke, and the way Celeste smiled every time she caught Amara watching. The betrayal hadn't begun in bed. It began in attention. It started small. Damon came home smelling of a perfume Amara didn't own. His shirts carried a faint sweetness, expensive, unfamiliar. When she asked, he said, "It's from work. Celeste sprayed something in the office." He started coming home later, sometimes with new excuses, sometimes with silence. Amara waited up, dinner cold on the table. "Honey, it's business," he'd say, loosening his tie. "You wouldn't understand how stressful it is." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to keep the peace, but the lies stacked quietly, one on top of another. One night, while sorting laundry, she found lipstick on a cuff that wasn't hers. Pale pink, faint but undeniable. Her chest tightened. She placed the shirt back, folded, pretending not to see. People say betrayal feels like an explosion. They're wrong. It's a slow leak, the kind that drains you before you notice. Amara smiled the next morning, kissed his cheek, and said nothing, because she understood something Damon never would. Silence is also a weapon when held long enough. The gala was meant to celebrate Voss Innovation's 10th anniversary. Chandeliers glowed, cameras flashed, and Damon Voss looked every bit the American success story. Amara stood by his side, elegant in a black dress that mirrored her quiet strength. Celeste Ray floated through the room in silver silk, her laughter sharp and practiced. When she reached the couple, she tilted her head and smiled. "Amara, your skin is so striking. I suppose that kind of glow must be genetic, right?" The air tightened. Conversations faltered. Someone forced a laugh. Damon's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Celeste's smile widened, enjoying the silence more than any applause. Amara blinked once, steadying herself. She felt hundreds of eyes on her, waiting for her reaction. Instead, she simply nodded. "Maybe it is," she said softly. Damon raised his glass to deflect the moment, pretending not to notice the cruelty in Celeste's tone. The music resumed, the laughter returned, but something between them had cracked. For Amara, the humiliation wasn't in Celeste's words. It was in her husband's silence. The car ride back was a tunnel of silence. Streetlights flashed over their faces, painting Damon's features in gold and shadow. Amara stared ahead, hands clasped in her lap. Finally, she said it. "She humiliated me, Damon, and you said nothing." He sighed, eyes still on the road. "You're overreacting. Celeste didn't mean it that way. You always twist things." Amara turned to him. "She insulted me, in public, and you laughed." "I smiled to keep the peace," he said. "You know how these events are." Her throat tightened. "Peace for who? You or her?" Damon exhaled sharply, frustrated. "You're making a scene again. God, Amara, can't we just enjoy the night?" She looked out the window. The night outside was calm, too calm. Inside the car, love had turned to cold air, thick and sharp. Sometimes betrayal isn't shouted. It's whispered through excuses. That night, Amara lay awake long after Damon fell asleep. His breathing was steady, careless. Her own was shallow, measured. She realized something then. Betrayal didn't start when he touched another woman. It began the moment he stopped defending her. In the early years, Damon would have faced the world for her. Now, he let the world laugh. That truth cut deeper than any affair ever could. She turned her head toward him. The man she had built her life around looked peaceful, as if cruelty cost him nothing. Amara understood this silence would become her prison if she let it. So she decided to stay quiet, but not broken. Silence, she knew, could be sharper than anger. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "Not yet." It wasn't surrender. It was preparation. The first pieces of her heart had cracked, but she was already learning how to use the shards. Days later, Amara scrolled through social media and froze. Celeste had posted a photo from La Mer, Amara's favorite restaurant. Caption: "The view is better when success sits across the table." Damon sat beside her in the picture, smiling the same smile he once saved for Amara. Another post followed. Celeste wearing a gold bracelet Amara had once admired in a boutique. She'd told Damon she couldn't justify the price. Now, Celeste flaunted it like a trophy. Mara stared at the screen, her heart tightening, her fingers trembling slightly. She wasn't angry, she was calculating. Every post, every caption, every smug gesture, she memorized them all. Celeste wanted to erase her, to replace her presence with glitter and noise. But Amara had learned something money couldn't buy: patience. She smiled faintly and whispered, "Keep posting, sweetheart." Because every display of arrogance would one day become evidence. What started online soon followed her into real life, where whispers cut deeper than headlines. The whispers came next. Neighbors lowered their voices when Amara walked by. Friends stopped calling. At charity events, people greeted her with pity disguised as politeness. "Poor Amara," they'd murmur. "Must be hard, losing him to someone like that." In the grocery store, she caught her reflection beside tabloid headlines. Voss, romance rumors confirmed. The image felt like a ghost of her former life. At work, colleagues avoided her gaze. Even her closest friend hesitated before asking, "Are you okay?" Amara smiled and said, "I'm fine," though the words tasted like glass. Home became quieter. The house she had built with love now echoed with distance. Amara realized she had become invisible, not because she lacked worth, but because the world loved stories of women who fell. But she wasn't falling. She was learning how to disappear on her own terms, and when she returned, no one would see it coming. Silence became Amara's closest ally. While the world pitied her, she started collecting details. Bank receipts, credit card bills, business statements. Every document that crossed her hands, she studied and copied. She noticed patterns: charges for expensive dinners, hotel bookings under aliases, wire transfers labeled consulting. Each paper felt like a piece of truth Damon believed she'd never look for. At night, she opened his office drawers while he slept. She memorized account numbers, dates, signatures. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing was calm. Betrayal had given her focus. She kept everything organized in a plain brown folder marked House Taxes, hidden in plain sight. Each morning, she smiled when Damon kissed her goodbye. He left thinking he owned control, but control was already shifting. It wasn't revenge she wanted, not yet. It was clarity, proof, a map to his arrogance, because the most dangerous woman in the world isn't angry. She's quiet, patient, and taking notes. Weeks later, Amara visited their local bank under the excuse of updating joint account information. The manager, Mr. Thompson, recognized her and smiled, though uneasily. "I'd like to review recent transfers," she said politely. He hesitated. "Perhaps Mr. Voss should be here?" Amara tilted her head slightly. "It's my money, too." After a pause, he nodded and pulled up the records. The screen filled with numbers, and Amara's stomach turned cold. Over $200,000 had been moved to an account under the name Celeste Ray. Her lips parted, but no words came. "Could you print that?" she asked softly. Thompson hesitated again. "You didn't authorize this." She met his eyes. "Would I be asking if I had?" He printed the pages quietly. When she left, the folder under her arm felt heavier than lead. Outside, the sky was bright, almost cruel. She walked to her car and sat for a long time, staring at the paper. Damon hadn't just betrayed her heart, he had robbed her future. Amara sat at her dining table, surrounded by papers that once represented trust. Account statements, business loans, property titles. Each one carried his name above hers. It wasn't love, it was ownership. She traced her finger along a signature she'd once been proud to share. Damon's handwriting had always looked bold, certain. Now it looked like deceit. 12 years of marriage, every sacrifice she made had been converted into transactions. Her savings funded his empire, his reputation, his affair. The shock didn't bring tears. It brought stillness, a quiet, controlled kind of fury. She whispered to herself, "You used everything I gave you to build the weapon you'll destroy yourself with." For the first time, she didn't feel like the victim of his choices. She felt like the witness of his downfall. In that cold realization, something inside her shifted. She no longer wanted to confront him. She wanted to outsmart him, and that was the moment Damon Voss began to lose. That evening, Damon called. His voice carried false warmth. "I'm in Boston, big investor meeting," he said. Amara glanced at her phone screen. Celeste had just posted a photo. Miami skyline, champagne glasses, Damon's watch glinting in the corner. "How's the conference, honey?" Amara asked gently. He hesitated. "Busy. You know how it is." Her smile was faint. "Of course. Just don't work too hard." He sounded relieved. "You're amazing, Amara. I knew you'd understand." When the call ended, she placed the phone down and stared at the wall. The lies weren't even careful anymore. He trusted her silence completely. She poured a glass of water and took a slow sip, steadying her breath. Amara didn't raise her voice. She didn't make threats. She simply whispered, "Keep talking, Damon. I'm listening." That was the night she stopped being the wife who waited and became the woman who planned. The next morning, Amara walked into a sleek downtown office. The door read, Dr. Elena Cruz, Family Law and Corporate Fraud. Elena, a Latina in her 40s with sharp eyes and calm authority, listened without interrupting. When Amara finished, Elena leaned back and said, "He thinks you're playing checkers. We're going to teach him chess." Amara nodded, clutching her folder of evidence. "I don't want to destroy him," she said quietly. "I just want the truth to matter." Elena smiled. Truth always matters, but it needs teeth. They spent hours outlining the plan. Financial tracing, legal traps, hidden documentation. Elena explained each step with precision. "He's rich, but arrogance is his weakness. Use it." When Amara left the office, the afternoon sun hit her face. For the first time in months, she didn't feel small. Justice wasn't a dream anymore. It was a strategy, and she finally had an ally who knew exactly how to make it hurt. Elena Cruz outlined the plan with the precision of a surgeon. "You'll stop fighting. You'll play the role he expects, the hurt, helpless wife. Let him believe he's already won." Amara listened carefully. "You want me to lie?" Elena shook her head. "You want justice. And justice sometimes needs a mask." It felt strange, but Amara understood. She had spent years showing strength. Now she'd use gentleness as her weapon. She practiced her tone, her expressions, even the pauses between words. Every sigh would be believable. Every glance would feed his ego. Elena handed her a list of steps. Record conversations, save messages, observe without reacting. "He'll think you've given up. That's when he'll make mistakes." Amara nodded. "So I become his illusion." "Exactly," Elena said. "The illusion that ruins him." That night, Amara rehearsed her silence in the mirror, softening her voice until even she almost believed it. Behind her calm eyes, calculation replaced pain. The war had begun, and Damon Voss didn't even know he was fighting. A week later, Amara made his favorite dinner: herb chicken, roasted potatoes, the smell of home he'd long forgotten. Damon entered the kitchen surprised. "What's all this?" She smiled faintly. "I just thought we should talk. Maybe it's time we stop pretending we're happy." He hesitated, then sat. "You mean, end things?" "Peacefully," she said, placing food on his plate. "No lawyers, no drama. You deserve to be free." Relief washed over him. "Amara, I didn't expect you to be this reasonable." Inside, her pulse stayed calm. Outside, her eyes softened with convincing sorrow. He reached for her hand. "You're handling this better than I thought." "I've had time to think," she whispered. When he left the table, she wiped his fingerprints from the wine glass, slipping it into a small plastic bag. Every move rehearsed, every word intentional. That night, Damon slept soundly for the first time in months. Amara did too, but for a different reason. Her performance had just begun. The next morning, Damon met Celeste at their favorite rooftop bar. She wore sunglasses even in the shade. "So, how did it go with your wife?" He laughed, full of confidence. "She's so naive, thinks I'm being generous. She even offered peace. Imagine that. Celeste smirked. Poor thing. Maybe she finally realized her place. Damon leaned back, pride glowing like sunlight on glass. Soon, everything's mine. The house, the stocks, the image. She'll walk away grateful for crumbs. Celeste brushed his arm. And us? He smiled. We'll go public when the ink dries. Below the table, his phone buzzed. A small red light blinked beside the microphone hole, unnoticed. Across town, Amara saved another file labeled Evidence 06. She didn't need to be in the room to hear his arrogance. Arrogance was loud, and she had learned how to listen. Amara turned her quiet evenings into an archive. Folders filled her drawer. Videos, voice recordings, receipts, screenshots. There was a hotel invoice from Paris, charged to the company card. Photos of Celeste wearing jewelry listed as corporate gifts. Audio clips of Damon boasting about personal withdrawals. She backed everything up twice, one drive hidden inside a book cover. Each file labeled by date and category. Her hands worked calmly, like a librarian preserving history. But this wasn't history, it was ammunition. Elena reviewed the growing file with awe. "You're meticulous," she said. "He'll never see it coming." Amara nodded. "He taught me to organize his chaos. I just learned too well." Each document told a story of greed dressed as success. Together, they painted a portrait of corruption too detailed to deny. The empire Damon built was now contained in a single folder, waiting for the right moment to detonate. At a charity gala for children's literacy, Celeste found Amara near the refreshments table. Cameras flashed in the background. "Amara," she purred, smiling. "You look peaceful. Must feel good to finally let go." Amara turned slowly, meeting her eyes. "You have no idea what I've let go of." Celeste's smile faltered for a second before she laughed. "Still dramatic, I see." "Not really," Amara said, adjusting her bracelet. "I'm learning to appreciate endings." Celeste raised an eyebrow. "Endings?" "Some," Amara replied, her voice soft but heavy with meaning. "Others are just transformations." The younger woman laughed again, louder this time, masking her unease. "Enjoy your freedom, darling." "I am," Amara said, "more than you know." As Celeste walked away, Amara turned toward the cameras. Her smile was effortless, calm. Everyone thought the story was ending. Only Amara knew it had just turned the page. Elena Cruz spread the folders across her desk, her eyes scanning each page like a detective piecing together a perfect crime. Bank statements, travel receipts, hidden transfers, photos, everything labeled and time-stamped. "Girl," she said finally, shaking her head, "you could run the FBI with this file." Amara smiled faintly. "He taught me organization. I just improved the system." Elena laughed, but her tone held respect. "Do you know what this is worth in court? He's finished." Amara looked down at the papers, her voice steady. "I don't want his ruin. I just want justice, and the truth on record." Elena tapped a document. "Then we'll give him both," quietly. For the first time, Amara exhaled without fear. The months of humiliation, of pretending, had built to this moment, a plan clean enough to be elegant, sharp enough to cut. Elena closed the folder. "Next step? Bait the trap." Amara nodded, "and he'll walk right into it." Over the next week, Elena and Amara refined every line of the new agreement. It was written as a consensual settlement, elegant and harmless. The language sounded generous: joint division, asset restructuring, tax compliance. Hidden beneath were clauses transferring 80% of Damon's holdings to Amara under legal review. Elena handled the filing. "He'll think it's paperwork for the divorce process. His lawyer will skim it, too confident to read closely." Amara listened carefully. "And once he signs?" Elena smiled. "He'll have legally surrendered everything he tried to steal." The document waited in a leather folder, indistinguishable from the rest. Elena placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "You're almost there. Let him think you're still broken. That's your camouflage." Amara nodded. "He'll see what he wants to see." The plan was ready. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about balance and the quiet satisfaction of precision. And then, the night before judgment arrived. The city glittered beneath Damon's penthouse windows. He poured himself a drink, laughter echoing across the glass walls. "Tomorrow," he said to Celeste, "I'll be free. No lawyers, no guilt. Just us." Celeste kissed his cheek, smiling. Finally. At home, Amara packed her documents into a neat briefcase. She checked each folder twice, her movements deliberate. When Damon called to confirm the schedule, she answered smoothly. "Tomorrow, I'll be free," he repeated. She paused, then said softly, "You will be, in ways you can't imagine." He chuckled, mistaking it for forgiveness. "That's why I always admired you, Amara. You never fight back." After the call, she stood by the window. The city lights reflected in her eyes, bright, sharp, unflinching. Freedom, she thought, doesn't come from leaving someone. It comes from making them face what they've done. The courthouse buzzed with reporters and flashing cameras. Damon arrived in a tailored navy suit, waving politely to the crowd. Beside him, Celeste wore a white dress that shimmered under the sun, her hand resting possessively on his arm. She looked like a bride at the wrong wedding. Inside, the air felt charged. Amara entered quietly, head held high. Her black suit was simple, but commanding. The crowd parted as she walked to her seat. Judge Navarro reviewed his notes, unaware of the storm about to break. Celeste leaned toward Damon. "You look powerful," she whispered. He smiled. "I always do." Amara sat across from them, calm and still. Elena stood beside her, ready. This wasn't just a courtroom, it was a mirror. Fame and dignity now stood face to face. As the session began, Amara's silence spoke louder than applause. The woman they had mocked was now the one writing the ending. The agreement sat on the table, pages crisp and neat. Damon's lawyer slid it toward him. Standard consent form. Simple division. Damon didn't bother to read. "Let's end this circus." He signed his name with the same gold pen that had once symbolized power. Across from him, Amara watched quietly. Elena met her gaze, a flicker of pride crossing her face. Judge Navarro turned a few pages, his brow tightening. "Mr. Voss," he said slowly, "you're aware this document transfers the majority of your assets to your wife?" Damon froze. "What?" The judge read another line aloud, his voice firm. "Clause 17, asset consolidation and permanent spousal maintenance, approved and signed." Celeste's smile collapsed. "Damon, what did you sign?" He turned pale, eyes darting to Amara, who simply said, "You told me I never fight back. You were right. I plan." The pen slipped from his hand. For the first time, Damon Voss understood what true power looked like, and it wasn't his. Judge Navarro held the signed papers, his expression darkening. "Mr. Voss," he said, voice calm but heavy, "are you aware that this agreement transfers 80% of your assets to your wife?" For a heartbeat, the courtroom was silent. Then came the whispers, a rising murmur of disbelief. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned forward. Damon blinked, confused. "That's impossible. That's not what I—" The judge cut him off. "It's your signature on every page." Celeste's fan slipped from her hand, clattering on the floor. "Damon, what did you sign?" Elena rose smoothly. "Your Honor, my client simply ensured transparency. Mr. Voss signed willingly, in front of witnesses." Damon's lawyer flipped through his briefcase in panic. "This must be a mistake." Judge Navarro slammed his gavel once. "Order." His gaze fixed on Damon. "Arrogance is not a legal defense, Mr. Voss." Amara sat quietly, eyes steady, unblinking. The man who once held her life in his hands now fought to keep his own composure. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the sound of a kingdom collapsing. Elena stood with precision. "Your Honor, permission to present further evidence." Judge Navarro nodded. "Proceed." She opened a leather binder and laid out documents with surgical grace. Bank transfers totaling $247,000 to an account under Ms. Ray's name. Audio recordings of Mr. Voss admitting to concealing assets. Social media posts verifying luxury expenditures funded by corporate accounts. A recording played. Damon's voice echoed across the courtroom. "She's too naive to notice. By next month, everything's under my control." Gasps rippled through the audience. Celeste turned pale. "You recorded that?" she whispered, trembling. Elena didn't look up. "Your Honor, this is not conjecture, it's documentation." She slid printed photos onto the table. Damon and Celeste at a Paris restaurant labeled business expense. The timestamp glowed in red ink. Navarro's jaw tightened. "The evidence is overwhelming." Damon tried to speak, but his voice cracked. His empire, his pride, every false narrative was now visible for everyone to see. Amara remained still, her silence louder than any argument. The courtroom erupted. Damon shot to his feet. "This is manipulation. She's setting me up." Judge Navarro's gavel struck twice. "Sit down, Mr. Voss." Celeste's mascara streaked as she whispered, "You told me it was safe. You said she'd sign anything." Elena's voice cut through the noise. "Your Honor, this was never about money. It's about deceit." Navarro leaned forward. "Mr. Voss, you attempted to defraud your wife. The court orders an immediate freeze of all assets under your name." Reporters scribbled furiously. Damon's lawyer collapsed back into his chair. Celeste buried her face in her hands. Damon stood motionless, color draining from his face. The empire he had built on charm and control now belonged to the woman he had underestimated. Navarro signed the ruling. "This hearing is concluded." The sound of the gavel was final, a single echo that ended a dynasty. Across the room, Amara exhaled slowly, not in triumph, but in release. The storm had passed. The crowd parted as Amara rose. She gathered her documents, smooth and deliberate. Cameras flashed, but she didn't flinch. Celeste sat frozen, eyes red. Damon stared at the floor, hands trembling. As Amara passed them, she paused only once. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "You were right, Celeste. Damon did deserve someone like you." Celeste looked up, confusion flickering in her eyes. But Amara had already turned away. Elena followed close behind, her face unreadable but proud. Outside, the reporters called Amara's name. She walked past them without a word. Justice didn't need noise. It only needed truth and patience. As she stepped into the sunlight, the weight she'd carried for years finally lifted. Some victories are loud. Hers was quiet, graceful, and absolute. 6 months later, the skyline of Houston shimmered behind a new office sign. Win Educational Consulting, Diversity and Inclusion for Tomorrow's Leaders. Amara stood before a room full of women, speaking calmly, confidently. "True education doesn't come from privilege," she said. "It comes from pain we survive, and the love we choose to keep." Her audience applauded softly. Dr. Elena Cruz watched from the back row, smiling. Damon Voss now lived in a modest apartment, working as a consultant for half the salary of his former employees. His name had vanished from headlines. Celeste had disappeared from social media entirely. After the session, a young woman approached Amara. "You make it sound so easy," she said. Amara smiled gently. "It's never easy. It's just worth it." Outside, the evening light reflected on the glass walls, bright, unbroken. If this story moved you, stay with us. Subscribe for more true stories of women who turned pain into power and never let anyone write their ending for them.